Good evening. Here we are, another Sunday evening with the book war. We're just going to wait for Miss Hattie to get online here. Hopefully you all have had a nice Sunday. Go live with Hattie. We all know that won't happen. It's just not how we roll. Oh, well, we have time for it to all go
go to heck, no doubt, no doubt. Okay,
but we'll take it for the minute that we're at it. Hey sis, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm okay. I got a cold.
Yeah.
My son loves to share. Zeke, he's a good sharer that
He
way.
is a good sharer. You taught him well, Hannah.
Yeah, I taught him so well. I'm so grateful. Lionel said to me today, he's like, I think because it starts in your sinuses and like a little bit of a throat thing, and he's like, it started for me today too. I'm like, so we'll just go through. It'll be Minnesota, winter Minnesota. This is what we do.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's just that time of year, like everywhere, but it's especially bad, obviously, in Minnesota, where it's like frigid.
Yeah, it's been really cold. Although it's supposed to get nice this next week. It's supposed to be like get up in the. Let me preface that with saying that the high this last week, when it hit 11, we were like, it's balmy. We hit double digits high. So the wind chill was still like -6, but it's supposed to get up into like the 30s and maybe 40s towards the end of the week. But we'll see. You know how it is. But yeah, so it's been, and it was just a full weekend, which was good, but it's just a full weekend.
Yeah,
so
a lot going on.
But yeah, but as you know, I can talk about books even when I'm sick.
Anytime.
Who cares? Anytime.
Anytime.
Whenever.
She could be on her deathbed and she'd be like, I think I need to tell you about this book that I read.
I'm sorry. Can we Insta live right now because I need the world to know about the book I just read.
About this book. Exactly. Yeah, I hear you, Hannah. I hear you.
Okay. So tonight we are talking about our January genre reads, which was literary fiction.
Yep. Yep, you got it.
And Hattie, you read. Oops. What did you read?
I have not finished it yet because Hannah's like, oh, you should read this one.
I did.
And look how long it is, guys. Hannah, how long was the one that you read?
It's only this long.
Yeah.
It's only this long. Yeah.
That's like 200 pages. Mine's like 500
Mine
pages.
Is 300. I would like you to know it is 300 pages.
Okay.
And I read that book in a weekend.
Okay. I know why you read this in a weekend because it's totally like you would get so sucked into this. And I'm just like, okay, this is fine. I'll pick it up when I want. Like that's just how I am about it. Like I don't dislike it, but I'm not like sucked in like the way I can totally see you got, because as soon as I started reading, I'm like, oh yeah. I know why Hannah totally like got sucked in. But the other thing that did happen to me is I got all these books from the library. And they're due tomorrow. So I had to read them.
No, I get that. I super get that.
So that was the other thing that happened. But I did get through the whole like first book. There's like three separate like sections, three separate books in this book. And I got through the first one. So I definitely have plenty to talk about. But I just wanted to say I didn't actually finish it, but it's very good, and I'm definitely gonna like keep on reading it. But I just got distracted by my library books that were gonna be due soon.
Due. And I have to tell you, so we have. And yeah, we'll see. I hopefully will still get Remarkable Bright Creatures done by Thursday.
But not this week, Hannah. It's not this week.
Not?
No.
Oh. Well, then I'm fine. Never mind. Good for me.
It's next Thursday. You've got like a week and like almost another week.
Okay, good. Honestly, I don't know why I had it in my head. I was like, I have to get this one done by Thursday, and I'm reading this other one for work, and I have to get that one done by Thursday. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm going to get Remarkably Bright Creatures. I only read like one chapter. And I'm like, okay, I started it. Okay, good.
A little longer, I will say, because that was one of my library books. Right. That's due tomorrow. So I read it a little bit earlier than I normally read our book club books. But it actually didn't read as fast as I thought it would.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's because I didn't get sucked into it. And I think a lot of people get sucked into it, and that's why it reads fast for them. I didn't get as like sucked into the
What
story.
kind of stories do you get sucked into? Do you know? Like, do you know what they are? Or do you think it's a timing thing as well?
It is definitely a timing thing for sure. But I would say the things that I do get sucked into are like, because like I would say books, like I can name like 5 books that I get sucked into every time. The Alienist, I freaking love that book. I will get sucked in and read that sucker in
So
like
funny.
3 days. The same thing, like The Historian. You know, I love that book
I do love that
by
book.
Elizabeth Kostova. And that sucker is like 600 pages in
Yeah.
tiny print.
Well,
And
an
I'll read that in like,
alienist is like a
it's
huge old thing.
it's big
I
too.
read it once.
But like for me, I think, and it's funny because like Remarkably Bright Creatures does kind of have a little bit of like a mystery sort of
Okay.
like going on.
Okay.
And so once I kind of figured that out, that this was the thing that was going on, I thought, oh, now I'm going to get like sort of like more sucked in. But I didn't. But I didn't. I was gonna say I didn't. I think there were a couple reasons for that. I guess we
Yeah.
can talk about it. It doesn't
No.
really matter on here because like I just don't want to ruin it for book club people, but I don't think any book club people are really gonna see this for that anyway. I'm not gonna spoil or anything, but I didn't think that the writing was as good as it could have been.
Ah.
This was her first novel,
Yeah.
and I think there's like potential there. Like I think she could do it, but the dialogue was
Stilted.
how do I say it? It was stilted. It was like trying to be like hip and cool,
Oh. Oh, okay.
and it felt real flat.
Mm.
And so the dialogue, I struggled with the dialogue a little bit. Not that it was like hard to read. It was just like, oh
No.
my god, this is like just poorly written dialogue. It felt like, and it was her. I'm pretty sure I read when I read the thingy about it on the back that this was her first. Yeah, it says this is her first novel. And it felt like it. Like to read it, it
Yeah.
felt like this was her first novel. So that isn't to say that like this woman doesn't have talent. Like she
No,
like
no, 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 no.
obviously, and like a
Right.
lot of people love
Good book.
this story and love this book.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But to me, it felt like this was probably like her first sort of
Yep.
foray into writing now. And I will say, like the thing that again, I don't want to sort of like spoil it or ruin anything, but the whole sort of giant octopus part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
I like this is gonna sound bad, but I honestly felt like it was completely superfluous to the
Oh.
story. So I'll be
Like
interested to see how you feel about it at the end. If you felt like it didn't need to be there. What I'm gonna say is like this story
was gonna happen with or without the octopus.
Yeah, like it could have been told. Okay, the octopus does play a little role, but it's also like I don't know. I'll be interested to hear like what you have to say about it. I felt like it was mostly a superfluous part of the story to make it unique, right? To make it special. And it fell a bit flat. It fell flat for me, but maybe it does. I don't think it does for everybody. It fell a little flat for me. So
well,
I'll just say
obviously
that.
the book does not fall flat for everybody. People love this book.
People love
so
this book.
I mean,
yeah.
and that's great. And like that is we are big supporters of loving books,
like,
even when we're not the ones who
read.
them.
Yeah, and like if you
that's why
love
there's
this,
billions of books.
Absolutely.
The whole point.
And I didn't dislike it, right? Like it wasn't like it was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe anybody likes this.
Right.
It wasn't like that at all. It was like
No.
it just like it definitely didn't like it wasn't particularly intriguing to me, and it didn't like kind of catch me and like reel me in. It definitely wasn't like that kind of a story for me. So it'll be interesting to see what the book club thinks of it too. I think we might have some varying opinions on that.
I'm sure. Yeah, we do on some of these kind of novels, which I kind of is why I like us reading them, is because we do always these novels that are kind of like popular in the zeitgeist of like reading world. Like we always have such interesting conversations, and it's always kind of fun to see where people land. Okay, so why don't you tell us a little bit about Pachinko though, and how you're liking it or not liking it, or
I do like
you have.
I do like, I want to say, like, when I say that I'm not getting, like, sucked in the way that I know that Hannah got sucked into it, like, now that I'm reading it, that doesn't mean that I don't like
Yeah,
it. Like, that actually doesn't mean that at all. There's plenty of books that I really like that I don't feel like I'm, like, getting
sucked into.
sucked into. So I will say, here's what I think. Because I've read several sort of these sort of, like, epic
Mm-hmm.
family,
Mm-hmm.
like, sort of,
History.
I'll just call it sort of
Right.
epic family
Yeah.
drama. I'll just say
Yeah.
it that way.
Yeah.
Um, and for the most part, they don't, like,
Yeah.
suck me in. Um,
That's fair. I
but
will say this is interesting to think about though, Hattie, but our mom loves, those are her books, is like
yes.
the family
Mhm.
generational
Yes.
dramas are like our mom's
Mhm.
books. Sorry, I just was thinking about that. Like some of the books that I read
Yeah.
as a kid
Yeah.
that were hers on the
Yeah.
shelf, like Savannah, and like they're just these
Okay.
multi-generational
hmm
books that she like loves.
hmm hmm And it's sort of funny too because it's almost like because we just
Yeah.
read Remembering Shanghai, and I love this is the weird part. This is the weird part. So it's like similar but it's
Mhm.
different to me. Because I love like when the daughter would give her narrative of the family history,
Right.
right? But it was sort of this historical thing
Right.
that was kind of like and these family stories from this historical perspective. I love that. That was my favorite part of that book, right? But somehow, when it becomes like a fictional story that's exactly the same, it feels different to me. I don't know why. It doesn't even make sense. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to make sense. But it's a great story, and like I don't dislike it in any way. The writing is gorgeous. This is clearly not her first novel. If it is, it's a phenomenal first novel. It's not though, and
No,
no, it's
it's
not.
not.
It's not. And
And I think her other ones
it really
are
is
sweeping as well. Like they're
right.
big, big sweeping.
They're very big. And I think sometimes in the big, like, sort of overarching, like, signing a
Mm-hmm.
sweeping narratives, sometimes I like it to be a little bit like more specific because I'm thinking about like the historian, right? That's
Right,
like this story
right,
inside of sweeping narrative, right?
right,
And it's sort of the same thing with like the alienist, right? It's this
right.
story that's kind of inside, not as much, but a little bit of a sort of this bigger sort of narrative. And so maybe that's what it is. I maybe like
Yeah,
um
yeah, maybe.
the more yeah the more sort of like
Yeah,
specific
you
story
like
to
a
tell within a
you
bigger
like a sweeping
yeah
history, but like a
let's say
particular but a
yeah
particular window
yeah
into that. Though I will say, I mean, I was thinking about Pinchico, because I knew we were talking about this, and one of the things I do like about that one is the heroine isn't always the mm, how do I want to say this? Like she isn't always she's always the
Mhm.
protagonist, but she isn't always the subject.
Oh, okay.
Does that make
Yep.
sense? Like
Yeah, in the first story she was kind of it was her story in the first
yes,
book,
it's
and
her
that's
story,
just
and
where
she's kind of the
yeah
protagonist, is or she's the subject of the story
Mhm.
in many ways
Mhm.
in that first book.
Yeah.
But as it goes longer, she is still the subject, but she's not the protagonist. Or no, she's the protagonist, but she's not the subject. Sorry, I said
Okay.
because they're the same, but they're kind of different, like in
Yeah,
every
they're
book.
sort of yeah,
Um,
it's a fine line kind of sometimes,
but
yeah.
yeah, and I was just thinking about that. I was thinking about her the other day, thinking
hmm
about like how she shifts and changes, and like I love that book. I need it back. I do need
I'll
that
give
one
it
back.
back to you. I'll give it
Well,
back to you. I promise.
I
I
think
will put
mom
it on
will
my
like it
borrowed shelf.
too.
So
But I am like surprised because it's not my typical. It's really not a
yeah.
typical one for me. So I think that's why it has me keep thinking about it,
hmm
about why for me, and I think it was also, and I am a big timer person when it comes to
Yeah.
certain books. Like
Yeah.
sometimes like the stars just align,
Just
life is in the right
like yeah.
place to like I had the weekend to do it, like in like everything kind of aligns for that moment. And I'm a big believer in like a moment in
Yeah.
time when it comes to books. And sometimes even when you go back to ones that you're like you had a moment with, you're like, I'm not,
This
I'm
wasn't
not.
even that good. Yeah.
Why did I have such a moment? Like,
I was in a
right?
weird
Like,
place. Yeah.
you're like, okay, that's an
hmm
odd duck. But I think, but it's also what I love about books too, is like some of them you're like, I don't know, okay,
Yeah.
sure. But then you might be go back to it and you're like, oh, that I got it that time,
Right.
or sometimes you And then I enjoy the thought process of like why, because it can't really all be about the book and the author, right? Like there's so much put into your reading as an individual, right? Like your literary criticism, you can't, you are the last part of the puzzle piece of reading. And so like thinking about like all of those things is just like, I mean, I guess that's why I love books, right? Like that's why we have
you love to overanalyze like everything, and so this gives you like a perfect outlet for that. Like
this is a good opportunity to overanalyze where it doesn't actually drive people completely. I mean, some people who don't like books necessarily, but most people doesn't. It's like it's a harmless overanalyzation of pretty harmless, but
fairly harmless,
fairly harmless.
I would say so, yes.
Yeah,
for sure. But anyway, I am liking it. So it's basically, at least thus far, it's about a young woman from South Korea. Well, Korea at the time that it's taking place. And it's sort of, it's her, it sort of starts with her parents, and then it's her and her sort of young adult situation. And then, and we just sort of like finished up with her kind of like, she just had her first child, and she got married, and she moved to Osaka, Japan with her husband. So that's kind of like where we're at. And so she is at the very beginning, I'm guessing, of a journey of figuring out what it means to be a Korean in Osaka, Japan, at a time where there was clearly from the narrative a lot of racism against Korean people living in Japan. And Japan had occupied Korea. It sounds like, just from the narrative. I am not familiar with the history of Korea and Japan at this time, so I'm just like going with what the book said, because I am not familiar with that at all. All that, but anyway, it's a great story. It's a beautiful story for sure. There's no doubt about that. I'm just like, as I'm reading it, I'm like, oh yeah, I know why Hannah got so sucked into this. But I'm just like, for me, it's like, it's not a slog. I don't want to make it sound like it's a slog or anything like that, because it's not. Like, I read like, I don't know, almost 100 pages like this afternoon, right? So it's not like it's hard to read or not intriguing. It just hadn't quite like, it just hadn't quite hooked
it down.
Yeah,
you can just set it down, and like it feels fine to set it down. Yeah. And like that's the ones that do catch you and you just can't quite. Those are very particular. And again, I really do think that has so much more to do with timing, because one of those was a Stephen King book for me, and I would never ever tell anybody that, but I just told.
But you just told everybody that. I will say, I do think you're onto something there, because I was just thinking about the first time I read The Alienist and the first time that I read The Historian. Both were on my winter break between semesters. Right? So I had like time to just like sit, just like kind of what you were just saying, Hannah. It's like you had that time to just sort of like sit and devote to it, and you could just sit and read and not feel like you had to put it down to go do this, that, or the other. And it just like, as we were talking, it just occurred to me that the first time I read both of those two,
isn't that funny?
was on my January break, where it's like, just snuggle up under your blanket, and I had the time to read because it was between semesters, and
hunker down and get it read. So
plays a big role for sure. So how was your book? What did you read? I've forgotten already.
So I read Louise Eldridge, The Roundhouse, which is a National Book Award winner, having a finalist, National Book Award. But this was the winner.
This is a finalist. She was a finalist.
Yeah, this was a finalist. It's a good way to pull out literary fiction.
Good call.
Anyway, but I absolutely understand why this book was a winner. It is fascinating. So it is a story of a 13-year-old boy on a reservation in North Dakota. I'm really bad at geography, like really bad at geography.
Right next to you. I feel like maybe you should know that one.
I know. I should know that. I'm pretty sure it could have been South Dakota. They're kind of the same. So
the Minnesotans do not differentiate between the Dakotas.
North Dakota. It says so right there. North Dakota. Okay, I was right.
Woo.
Anyway, so bad. But it is a bit of a mystery as well. So there, the very beginning, like it just says that it's like there's an attack on this reservation in North Dakota, and it affects this young boy, and it's his, I'm gonna say, unraveling as well as raveling, right? Like his coming of age, but also unraveling around that particular attack. And I will say, for the first 2/3 of this book, I was in. I was like, what happening? Oh my goodness. And then once I figured it out, and I think the last third of the book, like, you know what happened.
Yeah.
You have those information, that details, and there's still some more unraveling that's happening. But as soon as I got those details, it was much easier for me to set down.
And you're like, okay, I basically know it now. Okay.
And do my work, right? Like, and do the other things in my life. But it is a really interesting, and it really deals with the legalities and the, like, injustice of the legalities around reservations and our law, and like that when a crime is committed at this point in the 80s, when a crime was committed on a reservation by a white person, it could not be prosecuted by those on the reservation. Or by, like, it was like this weird empty place where you could do horrible things, and then, like, there was no repercussions from either side, no consequences. And so, like, there's a real wrestling with that kind of legacy, crappy legacy, inheritance of our past injustice to the indigenous people. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a really intimate portrait of this 13-year-old boy coming of age, as well as an interesting, and she said at the end, it has an afterword, and I'm like pretty sure I read it this way. This is how I read it. I hope it's true, but it was kind of a conglomeration of things that did actually happen. Like, it is a fictional book, but like, these are things that have happened to people in her research that she has done. And she is an indigenous woman here in Minnesota. She's a very prolific writer. She owns a book store up in Minneapolis, Butch Spark Books. But I think, you know, it was her kind of working out as well what this would be. And you do get this kind of, like, beautiful portrait of reservation life as well. And, but, like, with this bit of a mystery, but without a lot of, like, it's not, which I appreciate, because, you know, how I don't love gory detail. I mean, there's a little bit, but it doesn't come back to that over and over and over again. It's his perspective, and so what people will tell him and what he has to kind of conjure up out of what happened. You know what I mean? So it's really very good. I mean, it's literally a National Book Award winner.
There you go.
So
obviously, good.
And I really enjoyed it. I'm very happy I read it.
That's great.
And I highly recommend it. If it sounds interesting to anybody, it's definitely worth it. And it's not a hard read. It's not, because I will say some literary fiction can be a little
rough.
Too,
it can be. A little abstract too, like a little bit like, okay,
like,
is there
what are we talking about? I mean, there is a lot of literary fiction that I've read that I have to give to a friend of mine and be like, can you explain that to me? I don't know what
I was just thinking, like, Faulkner. Like, if you've ever read Faulkner, it's sort of like, what?
Well, Southern Gothic in itself is just a little...
It's kind of its own thing. Yeah, I've had my own little troubles with Southern Gothic. But I did just want to say, because the way you were saying about that book, that, like, that first, like, 2/3 you were, like, really into it. And then, like, once you kind of figured it out, you're just like, okay, whatever. I felt like that's this one suffered from that same thing, The Remarkably Bright Creatures. Because, like, I think she just gave too much too soon. And it wasn't even... it may not have even been halfway through when you sort of, like, put it all together. And then you still got like half the book to get through. Right?
Yeah, and I will say the pacing, that was a pure, like, I think, how do I want to say this? For hers, I didn't feel like she gave it away too soon. That wasn't it, because it's not a mystery novel, and, like, the last third is appropriate and right. Like, it fits the tone and the structure of, I think, what she's doing. I just was like, okay, to just be like, all right, I'll come back to it later. All right, I'll come back to it later.
Like,
do you know what I mean?
Like, it later.
Yeah, it wasn't like I need to finish this right now kind of a thing. But I because and then there's, like, the Barbara Kingsolver problem with Poisonwood Bible, which is like she just needed to stop. The last third of that book is like, I don't know why you just kept going. Have you never read that book? I've told anybody who's ever gonna. Okay, this is my. I love that book. I actually have it. I need to reread it. I've been wanting to reread it to see if I still like it, the first 2/3 of it, as much as I used to. but like I think it's the last 200 pages. I mean, it's a huge book.
Okay, that's a lot,
but
yeah.
the story ends, and then it's just like this time into the future, and I'm just like, oh, Barbara Kingsolver, no.
Just like the end. Just put the end page
But
in.
like,
Like, don't you wonder who the editors are? Like, get an editor. What the heck?
Well, it's Barbara Kingsolver, so she probably gets to do whatever she wants. But it was just like, it's like one of those few books that I'm like, if you're gonna read it, read it. But like, just know that you should just stop before she starts doing like the future addendums of like what happens to all these people. Like, just stop reading, because you just don't. It doesn't matter.
Don't even like.
But
care.
I also don't care. Like, some readers
Would
really care
yeah.
about the future, and I understand that, and I am just not that reader. I'm like, that's why I prefer when everybody dies in the end.
I know, it's so much better. It's such a nice,
Like,
perfect ending.
Nice,
Like,
it's a nice clean ending.
there's no
Everybody's
loose
dead.
threads after that. Like, everybody's dead.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Everybody. I really
Wraps
like the
everything up
stands
so
better than I do, but everybody's dead. It took a lot of pages to get there.
A lot of pages. Sometimes that is kind of how it goes. I will
But
say the other thing, two things. First off, I will read the rest of this book, of course, and then I will report
yeah,
back on it next month. But I also wanted to say that you'll laugh about this, because it just occurred to me. Another reason why I didn't like super love Remarkably Rare Creatures is because there's a particular character in the book who's like one of the main characters who's just like super annoying, and you'll know why as soon as you get to this person. Why Hattie's like, you're gonna be like, yep, this is the person that
that's the
Hattie
one.
can't stand.
You can't. Yeah.
Yep.
You do have that with characters. Like, if there's a particular character that like hits your funny bone of like irritation, I don't know if they have an irritation bone, but oftentimes they're teenagers. But
this person is not a teenager, but I would say this person acts like a teenager, which is
the
reason why
you don't have a lot of compassion for those characters, nor can you like just like set them aside. You do.
Well, when they're like a main character too, it's sort of like, okay, we gotta like keep coming back to this person, and it's just like for me, it's just such a gigantic eye roll. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh my gosh, here we go.
I have actually met you, so yes, I do know exactly what you
do know that. Yeah. So you'll know. So that's probably another reason why I was just like, because he becomes one of like the main characters in the book, and so you're like always sort of coming back to him. And anyway, you'll know exactly who it is once you get there. But honestly, like it won't surprise me if actually the majority of the people in our book club really do enjoy this book, because it's very sort of like entertaining. It's not like a crazy heavy story.
No. But it actually deals with something meaningful, maybe.
What's that?
I'm sure. Does it deal? The topic is somewhat like real life.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of sort of healing and figuring out how life goes on, and like very important stuff. And like I don't want to like be dismissive of that at all. I think for me, it just the writing could have been better. I just felt like the writing could have been better on a couple different levels, and I didn't feel like the thing that was making it unique was this like character that is this giant octopus, right? That's the thing that makes this book unique.
Yeah,
and that fell really flat.
Yeah.
Just
yeah.
It. Yeah.
I feel like sometimes we don't do a lot of negative. We're just not. We don't need to put negative in the world.
Everybody has their own thing, and that's fine.
But I think that sometimes we should like just grab a couple of the books that we just have like such a soapbox about.
Yeah, we should.
And like
we
do
a
that.
Soapbox episode.
We should do a soapbox and just be like, this is clearly a soapbox episode.
Yeah.
Because the Midnight Library is coming back around again in the
yes. You did not.
I can't
at all. That'll be the funny thing, because it'll all be like the most popular books that everybody loves, and we'll be like soapboxing on all of them, because those are the ones that in general we like soapbox the most about.
Yeah, I can't. I don't know why it's coming back around, but it's like I've seen it like 6 times. I'm like, okay. I thought you were
everywhere. That book is everywhere. I just haven't read it because you told me about it. I'm like, yeah, A, I don't need that in my life, and B, then we'll soapbox about it together.
Yeah.
No doubt, and like that's a bit much for people.
Yeah, that's a bit much. We've had a couple, but we should do that. Would be fun.
That would be fun.
That would be fun.
We'll have to think about that and put that together here.
Put a soapbox,
because that would be a fun episode.
One together. So for next month, I didn't know we were doing memoirs or biography.
Or biography. Yep.
February genre. Did you pick a book yet?
This is what I was thinking about this afternoon. I'm like, oh, you know what? I got that biography of Peter the Great, by Robert K. Macy up on my shelf. And I'm like, maybe I'll read that one because I read his biography of Catherine the Great, which was amazing. He did one on the Romanovs, which was amazing. And I picked it up before this to be like, oh, I'll hold it up and show. And then it was like, oh my god, this sucker is like 1,000 pages long, and it is full on gigantic hardback with like the tiniest print that you've ever seen in your life.
Did you check on Audible? Did you check to see how many hours it is?
I should check
Do
that.
they have it?
You should check. I haven't checked it. It's on my shelf, so I was like, oh, I'll just like that's the one I'll do. And then I like picked. I was like, oh my god.
No.
And the Catherine the Great was fantastic. Robert K. Macy, Catherine the Great, amazing. He did the Romanovs, which was amazing. But I picked this one up, and I'm just like, oh my god. Okay, Peter the Great
Yeah,
had
and
a lot
after
of
you
life.
read Patinko, which is also a
I
thick one,
know.
you're just gonna read
I
all
know.
the fat ones for our genre reads, and I'm gonna read all the skinny ones.
I know. That's what's gonna happen. One of these years, I'm just going to be like, I don't care how many books I read. I'm just going to read my fat
You should
books because sometimes I don't
read your
read
fat
them
books.
because I'm like, oh, I got to like keep up on the book wars.
No, read your fat books, Hattie. You will always kick my butt on pages. We know that to be
Well,
true.
that is probably true. I mean, but I'm just going to grab it really quick just to show you this Peter the Great book.
Okay.
It's in this room. And I just feel
You should send go far.
like you
And you
need
do
to
have a
get
beautiful
like,
star.
okay, this is how big it is. That's my head. Look how big that it is, bigger than my head. That's how tall it is. Okay.
That is enormous, Hattie. Hattie, that is enormous.
Look at that, Hannah. Look at that.
That's an old book.
Yeah, this is. Let me see how many pages this is here.
All
right, let's see. Oh, okay. Yeah. The whole the bunch of the end, of course, is the end notes. So
okay. So you know.
It's only 855. That doesn't count the appendices at the end. The appendices and the bibliography and the index.
It's totally reasonable now.
Completely reasonable now. That's my head. The book is bigger than my head. I mean, it's almost as thick as my head too. Like, wow.
Oh my god, Hattie.
Anyway, yeah, I know. Author, yeah, he did Nicholas and Alexandra. That's the other one. That's the Romanovs. Is the Nicholas and Alexandra, which I did read, and I read the Catherine the Great, and they really are very, very good. And like, I know I want to read this, but it's just like, oh my gosh, okay, this is going to be.
It's a lot. That's a lot of book. That's a lot of book. It's like a Middlemarch.
Oh yeah. Oh, this might even be long. Like honestly, words. This maybe more. Because this is like the book itself is bigger.
It's bigger too. Yeah.
Oh look, there's a page with some pictures on it though. So
there you go. Yeah, one page of pictures. It's an illustrated version.
Pictures of storybook.
I would need to wait for the young adult version of that.
You're gonna need to wait for like the kindergarten version of this because even the young adult version, I think that's gonna be pretty bad.
The great young adult version. I'm sorry, I need that into YA.
I need that in YA. So anyway, that's the one I was like, oh, maybe I'll read that. And then I picked it up. I'm like, oh my god, maybe I won't read that. And so then I was like, okay, well, I got to think about it.
Okay.
Whether I'm going to actually like delve into Peter the Great here, or check it out and get something a lot easier and a lot less. But I know it's going to be great. That's the thing. It's just like maybe I just need to like suck it up and just be like, oh no, you're going to love it. I know I'm going to love it.
You're going to love it.
It's so good, and he's a really good writer. He does a great job with the Russian history stuff. So, yes,
Peter the Great Russian. Peter the Great was Russian.
Yes, Hannah. Peter the Great was Russian. As was Catherine the Great. As were Alexandra and Nicholas
Romanov. I've seen Anastasia.
Okay. Well, they were her parents.
No, I know. I've seen it. I've seen the Disney movie.
Okay, that was your. Okay, never mind. Anyways, yes, Peter the Great was Russian. He came first in the timeline, and then Catherine the Great was maybe 100 years later. Okay. And then I'm not sure if it was 100 years. I'm not sure when Peter the Great. Anyway, he was before Catherine the Great, and then Catherine the Great, and then the Romanovs were obviously the early 20th century. So they were after Catherine. Catherine the Great.
I
But
just
yes,
like
they were all Russian.
I just like to watch you be appalled at my lack of historical knowledge sometimes. It's fun. And that my historical knowledge literally comes from Anastasia.
From Anastasia.
The animated.
To be fair, that's where most people's like Russian history comes from. I think that's probably pretty true.
And Denai Keeker, sir. That's my favorite line.
Yeah, I know. But see, I had a professor who's one of my favorite professors who her special, like her area of expertise is Russia and Russian history. So that also kind of like she taught my Enlightenment class, but you know, she kind of like pointed me towards some like interesting Russian history. So that's kind of how I got a little bit into the Russian history. She wrote a book, which of course I bought and read, and it was great. You know, so that was kind of how I got like turned towards some Russian history stuff. But it is super interesting. I mean, I think all history is kind of interesting. So that's
all history is interesting. All history is interesting. Yeah, that is true. I would agree with you on that. I just, there's only so much time. Okay, I am going to do a memoir.
Okay, great. What are you doing?
People should be surprised by because I don't love memoirs, but I think both of these two are actually worthy of memoirs. So hence why I have them on my shelf. But I'm going to put it up. I'll make another poll like I did for this month because I liked it. It was kind of fun. About which one I'll read, but I'll read both of them probably this year. So first one is Hijab Butch Blues, which I'm very excited about. And was on, both of these are on Goodreads as like most popular in 2023 memoirs.
Oh, nice. Okay.
People's Choice.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
And then the other one is actually Page Boy by Elliot Page, which a dear friend of mine told me she had read and actually really liked and thought that I would like.
Yeah.
And I don't love memoirs. So, but that it's written really, really well. That's usually why I don't like memoirs. It's because they're just not, well, there's lots of reasons I don't like memoirs. There's another topic for our
we could jump on.
But I think I'll put up and see what people would like me to read first for February. Between those two, do a little engagement. We're gonna do a little engagement. But those are the only two we're gonna do because those are the two I have on my shelf, and I got a few books here on my shelf.
So. Well, see, you're really good though. Like, I don't let anybody pick anything for me. So, like, I mean, anything, like my clothes, my books, my anything.
One more time though, they're both on my shelf. I've already picked them for me. Let's be clear.
And people would just pick this one for me because it's insane in any way. Like, if I put this one and another one up, everybody would be like, oh no, she's reading Peter the Great now. Like, that's.
No, I mean, if they don't like you or do like you and just want to mess with you. So,
because I know I'm going to love it. Like, that's not even a thing. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
So,
anyway, okay. That's what we got.
All right.
Okay,
that's what we got.
And our next
today.
Oh yeah, I did want to say I'm currently listening, almost finished. I've got just like 30 minutes left of just because this is very relevant right now. I wanted to bring it up really quick. A friend of mine recommended a book called Palestine: A 4,000-Year History by Nur Masalha, and I've listened to it on audio version, and it is really fantastic.
Right.
Just to like get some kind of basis for what's even happening like today, right? It's the ancient history, but it goes right into the 19th, 20th century history of Palestine and Israel as it is now as well. And so it has been phenomenal. So if you're a person who's just kind of like get some basis in what's currently going on, what's gone on in the past, the past 20th century, the ancient history of Palestine, it's well worth listening to or picking up and reading it. I listened to it. I'm not sure if my friend read it or listened to it, but it's she didn't. I don't think she mentioned it one way or the other, but she did recommend it to me, and I found it to be very, very helpful and just full of really good information. So just wanted to throw that one out there as another good book to read, just to get some basis and some information about an area and a conflict that you may or may not feel like you know as much as you should know about. So just wanted to put that one out there. Yeah,
absolutely.
So,
good. Yep, that's good. Cool.
Yep. And our next BiblioTalk talk. That was the other thing I wrote down. Sorry, I didn't interrupt.
I was just
you
interrupted yourself.
Yeah, I interrupt myself. I know. Sunday, February 18th. So it's actually a few weeks away, but just because we have some stuff going on Sundays, and then we got Super Bowl Sunday coming up.
That's right.
Which the Eagles, by the way, Hannah, I don't think I told you the Eagles are out because they blew it last week, which I know you don't care. Anyway, but You might be happy to know that our friend Josh's Lions are going to the NFC Championship game, which is pretty amazing.
Okay, I will send him a happy text.
Yes, I'm telling you, he is very happy
Good.
today.
Okay.
Because they won today and are going to the NFC Championship game.
I did hear today at church that the Packers lost at the very last minute yesterday, but it was a really good game with the 49ers.
It was.
And the 49ers are not the Chiefs. I also figured that out today. Because they do look a lot alike. They're very similar.
They do both wear red. It's true.
And gold. They're like red and gold. And they're very and they have it's similar. Anyway,
it is
I'm learning.
Similar, but you're right. They are two separate teams.
This is my level of sports.
This is your sports engagement. I just wanted to tell you the Eagles are out, so we don't have to worry about that. But I did want to tell you because I thought you might want to, quick text to our friend Josh and say, congratulations on the Lions.
On the Lions.
Going to NFC
Championship.
I
think if I said NFC Championship, he might fall out of his chair.
He would fall off his chair. I know, that's why I'm telling you so that you can say it to him and he'll be like, what the heck just happened?
What happened?
What Twilight Zone?
The universe has blown up. Hannah sent me a happy text about sports. Exactly. And we are just doing one BiblioTalk in February, I think. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it'll
just got some other stuff going on.
So it will just be about our genre read. Yeah. So off we go.
I have nothing
else read those genres
to read between now and then, obviously, because this is going to take all of my time.
That's it. Yeah. Well, like you said, we don't have to have them finished. It's not like that kind of a thing.
I know. Obviously, I didn't have this one finished either.
Yeah. So that's fine. So,
Okay. Sounds good.
That sounds good. All right.
Yep.
Well, thank you, everyone, for taking the time to stay with us. If you did, well done. Good for you. And if you didn't, we're fine. We don't really need anybody else. We're fine.
Yeah,
but otherwise, we look forward to hearing anything else that you're reading. And yeah, we'll see you in February. All right. Sounds good.
Have a good night.
Night.